Thanks to our team here, board members and everybody, and especially Daryl and Todd for managing all that kind of virtual activity. I'm passing around a sign-up sheet, the barber down here. Thank you very much. Please sign up if you're a member. Check the box there. Yes, I'm a member of Rivers Coalition. If you are a member of the coalition, raise your hand. Member organization. Thank you all for being here today. We also have with us Major Bell, Major Corey Bell from the Corps, and also from the district we have Lawrence Glenn, longtime staff member of the district, senior staff. He's going to give us some ecological update, I think. So we're ready for that. We do have just some slight logistics. Is Nikki told me that we have a hard stop at about 12:20 because we have to be all 12:15. 12:15, because we have to vacate here and be all out of here by 12:30. They have another city meeting, and we want to make sure that we're allowing that to happen. We do thank our city commission. I see Will Clark and Commissioner Stevens here. Who else am I missing? I don't want to miss anybody, but commissioners, thank you very much, City of Stewart, for hosting us. We really appreciate it. And this has worked out well. We have a great presentation today about preserving Martin County land, and Merritt Matheson is going to be bringing us that. My other comments are really not important at this time. I'm glad everybody fared good for the storm. Hopefully you did very well. For those who didn't, we hope we can help to get worked out. A lot of people did suffer a lot from these particular outbreak that nobody expected during this before landfall from Milton coming to the shore. So it affected a lot of people. I had one touchdown half a mile from my house, so it was pretty scary time. All right, well, let's if you would join me, stand, and we'll pledge allegiance to the flag. Appreciate it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. All right. Yes. Okay. So, we have these updated agendas. You can use them like a fan, you can, but everybody just don't breathe too much. There we go. We can thanks for that announcement. Anyway, can't hear you anyway. Thank you. I see we have Commissioner Hurd. Thank you for coming. And we appreciate all that Martin County and City of Stewart are doing to help our rivers. It's been a long road. We had a periodic science call just this last week too, so we'll have some updates from Major Bell as we get forward. And but let's get into our presentation. We're very glad to have Merritt Matheson with us today to kind of give us the lowdown and updates on the referendum that's up for ballot on this coming election. Thank you. Oh,
there we go.
Thank you.
Use that one there. This one you just got, right? There you go.
Hello. Okay. Hi, Jim. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm Merritt Matheson, and today I'm here on behalf of Martin County Forever. I'm one of the co-chairs of Martin County Forever. With me in the back, we have Jim Snedeker, the other co-chair and leader, and can we just give him a quick round of applause for getting us this far? Real quickly, he approached me over 2 years ago with this mission, and he did say he would do all the heavy lifting. He certainly lived up to that bargain, and he also promised, one thing I asked of him is we would work on it together, but remain 100% pure and offer to back out if we saw impurities, and we did along the way. But I can say, from the deepest parts of my heart, that this is 100% pure, with a mission to conserve land, to protect water quality in the St. Lucie estuary. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. So why am I here before the Rivers Coalition meeting? Well, as I said, this mission for Martin County Forever is to protect water quality in the St. Lucie estuary by conserving land. Last meeting, we had the new Colonel Bowman of the Army Corps of Engineers say before us that LOSUM, a plan that many of us in this room have worked on for years, is enacted. It was enacted in August. And I look at that as a compromising win from where we were in the past. And Colonel Bowman said, that plan will reduce 95% of regulatory discharges to the St. Lucie estuary. That's the win I'm talking about, but it's not 100% win. It's not enough. We're going for zero regulatory discharge to St. Louis estuary. But we can take that win and say, what's next, or what more can we do? And that's part of what Martin County Forever is all about. Because us as humans, humankind in Florida, our ancestors have done it. We've dramatically expanded our drainage basins, and we've crossed them all up all over the state to the way we want them. So the basin runoff that the St. Lucie estuary is getting is not natural. It's not what our seagrass and our oysters and a healthy estuary in and of itself could handle what we've diverted into that basin, besides Lake Okeechobee regulatory discharges. So that is one of the primary reasons why we need to expand natural lands in Martin County and keep them natural to slow down our modified basin runoffs, to hold the water on the land as long as possible for the purpose of water quality in the St. Lucie estuary. There are many, many other purposes. But the reason I'm talking to the Rivers Coalition and the reason the Rivers Coalition supports this is because of that purpose, for water quality in the St. Lucie estuary. And the voters are going to have that choice before them, today and on until November 5th. And by the way, I'm proud I voted today. Anyone, please go out and do it. You have till November 2nd, early voting. And the choice before the Martin County voters, it's for a 0.5-cent sales tax for 10 years. Higher, either by fee simple or conservation easements in 4 environmentally sensitive areas in Martin County. This is real important. All the funds that are generated from that 0.5-cent sales tax that go to the county must be spent in 4 environmentally sensitive areas that we've outlined. Those areas many of you are familiar with are Palmar, Indian River Lagoon South Watershed, the Loxalucy Headwaters, and the Blue Ways program. Land cannot be acquired outside of those areas. And if it's a conservation easement, it's irrevocable and in perpetuity and runs with the land. Conservation easements are important in these areas because we know a couple facts. One, there's a record amount of funding at the state level for grants to work with acquiring conservation easements. And 2, we're never going to create the desired wildlife corridors that we're going for, or a green beltway in these areas, because some of the landowners are not going to sell their land, but they will sell a conservation easement. And that's critical, because if we ever want to have a wildlife corridor, which this has the potential to do, from Jonathan Dickinson State Park to Atlantic Ridge State Park, we need to look at all options, because the end goal is to keep the land undeveloped. And a conservation easement can do just that, along with acquiring the land fee simple to preserve in perpetuity. Now, a few other important points about this tax. It does not apply to groceries, school supplies, and prescription medications. And it caps out at any purchase above the $5,000 mark. Meaning, if you find a $10,000 car, good luck nowadays. Only the first 5,000 of that has the extra half-cent sales tax added to it. So we've talked about why this is important for our St. Lucie estuary. We've talked about some key facts. Importantly, I'm here today to address some of the questions about how we can ensure that the money is spent and some of the safeguards we put in. And I want to go over the structure of how this works. Our local board of elected officials at Martin County, by law, they're the ones that have the authority to propose this in a referendum to the voters of Martin County. They passed an ordinance 5-0 last spring to put this on the ballot, put the choice for the voters. Once the voters choose to pass that, that ordinance is law. No future commission can change that. The only way the ordinance language can be changed is to put back out in another referendum to the voters. And no offense to any county commissioners in the room, but we wanted to pursue it by this means because we don't know who the future commission might be. And if I don't know who they're going to be, why should we trust who they are? That's why we trusted the choice to be put to the voters. And we put our effort in the ordinance language. And that's why it's so important, because that cannot be changed. In the ordinance language, some of the safeguards are, it requires an annual audit for transparency of how the funds are spent. And again, all the funds, it says multiple times in the ordinance, must be spent for the purpose of water quality and preserving natural areas in the 4 outlined areas. In River Lagoon South, Palmar, Loxalucy Headwaters, and the Blue Ways program. Along with that, we have a 9-member Citizens Oversight Committee. It's outlined in the ordinance. And I'll get into that in further detail. I want to show you some of the slides of the ordinance language. I'm also going to show you some slides of the past ordinance that the last time this passed was in 2005-06. Vote occurred in 5 and went into effect in 2006. Another question I get a lot is, why should we pass a tax? Shouldn't the county just acquire these lands on their own? And the reason we are pursuing this method is for these layered safeguards. So we don't know who the future commission could be. And imagine the debate of this commission in the county or any commission trying to acquire lands of this magnitude. And what would happen if they're used just for, did I lose it? No. A future commission could change the way those lands are purchased and what they're used for. If it's done and outlined for the purpose of water quality and preserving natural resources in an ordinance, no future commission can change the reason those lands were purchased. That's why we're doing it through a referendum. Mickey, can you pull up the slideshow? So another comment we've been getting a lot during this campaign is, well, the last time this occurred, the county spent funds on a water park. And they built too many parks, and that was an environmental push, and they duped the taxpayers. So I want to compare what happened in 2006 with our current ordinance, because we took those comments while we were going down this route. We analyzed the ordinance in 2006. And we moved on from there. Because the fact of the matter is, next slide, please. In 2006, the voters did pass They approved for 5 years a 0.5-cent sales tax, and the county benefited overall. And yes, one of the things that's been controversial was Sailfish Splash Water Park. But when you look at the referendum language and the ordinance, the important part to remember is that was legally allowed. So this is a slide from that 2006 ordinance. And if you look down, third line down, right after beaches, it says to create and improve parks. That's some of the important language. Now, this is the referendum language that the voters could see. That is in every ordinance. The ordinance, you don't have a limit on the number of words, but the referendum language that the voters will actually see is a 75-word limit with some words required to be in there. For example, municipal infrastructure. State law requires those words to be in there. There's no way of getting them out. Next slide, please. That was the referendum language, again in 2006. Now, the use of funds and revenues by the county. In 2006, there were two parts. Part A, very similar to our language. This is the environmental paragraph. I'm just going to read to acquire by fee simple interest environmentally significant lands for the purpose of preserving, conserving, and restoring the St. Lucie River. Next slide. Here's the important part. Again, this is 2006. Part B, to plan and construct parks and recreation facilities. Right there in the ordinance. To plan and construct parks and recreation facilities. This is not our current ordinance. This is not what the voters are voting on now. But I want to show you this to be as transparent as possible. Next slide, please. Section H outlines how the funds will be spent. HI. 50% of the revenue coming to the portion of the county will be used in 6.1A, the environmental part, for conservation lands. The next section, 50% of the county's portion will be used in 6.1B to construct parks and recreation facilities. Now again, Sailfish Splash Water Park has been controversial, but many people in the county love it, and many people voted for this ordinance to pass. This passing is why we had Haupadioke Park, Indian Riverside Park. I, for one, love taking my children to the fountains there. Next slide, please. Our current ordinance, what we did was specifically remove the language that allowed for creations of parks and recreational facilities, because that's the feedback we heard. This push is to protect water quality in the St. Lucie estuary by conserving and restoring natural lands. Next slide. Okay, there we go. This is the 75-word referendum language. I'd be happy for any of you to come up after and dig into it and read it a little further. There's no reference to creating parks and recreational facilities in there. Next slide. How the funds will be spent by the county. Two sections, they are very similar, except for one is for fee simple and one is for conservation easements. To acquire by fee simple interest environmentally significant land for the purpose of preserving, conserving, and restoring the St. Lucie River, the Indian River Lagoon, Palmar, the Loxahatchee, and the St. Lucie River headwaters, thereby protecting water sources, preserving natural areas, and beaches, providing open space, protecting wildlife habitat, water storage, and water recharge areas. That is the purpose of this initiative. Section B is almost the exact same language, but instead of fee simple for conservation easements. Next slide. This is the important part when reference to conservation easements. Conservation easements acquired under this program shall be perpetual and irrevocable pursuant to section 704.06 Florida statutes. They're perpetual and irrevocable. I already explained why conservation easements are so necessary to complete Martin County's goal of having that green beltway or connecting wildlife corridors. So I wanted to show everyone this in the room so you guys can help when we get these tough questions. But more importantly, to address some of the concerns that people brought up about, well, the last time this was done, the funds were misused. And I'll correct that. They were not misused. They were used as the ordinance dictated. They were perhaps mismarketed, or the educational campaign at that time was incorrect. But when we look back at history, they were used as the ordinance dictated. But most importantly, our ordinance dictates, and we have a 9-member oversight committee to watch how the funds are used. But right there, the slides are up, and it's clear as day. So I'd like to take some questions because there were incredible benefits from the past, from not only the one that went on in 2005 and 6, but most of Martin County's public lands have come from initiatives like this. And as the county grows, we have to continue with these initiatives. So this is just one of many of continuing on a great tradition. So I want to open up to questions that you might get. Mr. Harder?
A question is posed to me is who decides what land to buy? And who looks after the land after it's bought?
Excellent. Excellent questions. The questions were who decides what land to buy and who looks after the land? So land management, thank you for bringing that up. First off, who decides what land to buy? Throughout this process, our team who lobbied the county, this did not come directly from the county, Martin County Fair's team lobbied the county, worked intimately with Mr. John Mayle and Mike Houston of the county, their ecosystems and restoration department in the county. They're going to tee up parcels and work with the initial breaking of the negotiations with property owners of parcels in the 4 outlined areas. They're bound by those 4 outlined areas. Those negotiations then are going to be teed up to the Environmental Land Oversight Committee, which is outlined in the ordinance. 4 members of that committee are from established environmental groups. 3 members from that committee represent some groups such as the business community. For example, a member from the realtors, a member from the taxpayers, or a member from the business. And 2 members of that required committee represent the agricultural industry. That oversight committee was specifically designed to have representatives come from already established organizations in Martin County. So that those members on that committee, there's this one extra layer of security. So they're not Joe, who's commissioner's friend, that always does whatever Commissioner X says. They're speaking and representing a certain group on behalf of that committee. Now, who manages the lands once they're acquired? That's going to depend a lot on where they fall. For example, the Blue Ways program is roughly 400 acres. To fall under the Blue Ways program, It's undeveloped parcels of waterfront along the waterfront. Most likely the county will end up managing roughly that 400 acres. But some of the other areas, for example, Indian River Lagoon South, the goal there is to seek and work with, say, the South Florida Water Management District, seek matching grants or perhaps 80-20 grants. You never know, Mr. Glenn. We'll talk to Drew about that, but you know, and the district would continue to manage those, but the deed would still be held by the county. Or Palmar might be the DEP or FWC. So it does depend on individual parcels. But the reason this was structured was to take the funds that we're asking county taxpayers to tee up to provide the seed for land acquisition. The vast majority of target areas will be matched with a state or federal agency with granting funds, and then the continued long-term management. The county would work with that agency and they would provide the long-term management. Other questions?
This is a somewhat loaded question, but Merritt, there was recently a newsletter that went out in which, without mentioning the name of the individual that sent it, could you just address the question of how do we correct, let's just say, the misunderstanding that was created by that newsletter that would directly contradict what you just had presented? That is, the newsletter indicated or gave the impression that our referendum and ordinance is similar to that which was passed previously. How do we get the word out to the public to correct the record? Because many people, I believe, have been left with the wrong impression. I'm sure it wasn't done intentionally, but that's the impression that a lot of people have gotten.
So to summarize that question, I think it was referring a lot to the slides I was presenting and the differences between the referendum passed in 2005-06 and the choice before the voters now. And, you know, Martin County Forever, as well as the county, has been done everything possible to be as completely transparent through this process. All the slides I showed you today are screenshots with the exact language of the ordinance passed. And the ordinance must be followed once it's approved by the voters. But if you're talking to someone around town, or if you can see this post on social media, or you can email your friends, those are some of the key points. And we're outright asking people to be fully transparent. In 2005 and 6, in doing some research, some of that was a political push. Because at that time, Martin County needed improvement on some of those parks. Halpatioke Park needed some work and needed to be done. And a lot of people love and use it. It was political strategy because we wanted to pass. Our team has taken the bet that the political environment in Martin County right now will support a referendum that is fully for preserving and conserving land. That is the push, and that's the language right there in the ordinance. So please spread that word.
So I assume that you have a list of lands in mind, or there have been some lands sort of targeted. If this passes, how much revenue do you anticipate it would raise sort of on a yearly basis, and at what pace would you be able to acquire some of those lands?
Great question. So let's repeat, if this passes, how much revenue will it generate and how quickly could we acquire those lands? So in the ordinance, the county is allowed to bond up to 80% of the estimated revenue. The estimated revenue is over $18 million a year. So you're looking at $140 million, and they can bond that on day one. January 1st, 2025, if this passes, Gil. So we're looking, and once this passes, not if, we intend to continue working with the county staff. The first step is to pass a resolution that more thoroughly describes when the Environmental Land Oversight Committee will meet, the structure of that committee a little more in detail, and how we can get members approved by the board to be sitting on that committee so we can start reviewing parcels. Because we want to buy land at 2025 current market rates and not wait for land prices to go up.
Good points. All right. Well, I think Mayor did an excellent job in presenting this, and especially comparing it to before. And it's to the question that Jim and others had brought up about comparing it to previous things in 2006. We need to get that word out too, if apparently there's concerns there. This is read the ballot information. The information is on the ballot. Read it carefully and then vote. But it's important that we all weigh in on this. We haven't, maybe one more question time. Paul.
Here we go. Why'd you go?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the question is, and Merritt mentioned it, partnerships. And I don't remember the exact amount, but there's a multiplier effect in this, that there's a lot of like-minded entities like the Water Management District that wants to do water projects in Florida Forever and corridors. And Mark, do you, or somebody remember what some of the matches you guys got in the first bond initiative? Because you guys really got.
I remember the Alapata purchases were, I mean, we had a check, I remember, with the commissioner down there at the district presenting this big size check, like 26 million or so for Martin County's match. And that was leveraged, and it, like it said, probably about, you know, more than 50% of $7, right? Yeah. Yes, yes. Yep. We bought 76 million worth of land back then for that. So this is, it's an ongoing thing, but it's definitely a fact to remember and to talk about, is that it's not just the 18 million a year that can be raised through this. It's going to be leveraged, and the purchase ability will be way out there.
No, that's a great point. We've done all our calculations based on as conservative as we possibly can. That's why in the ordinance, they're only allowed to bond up to 80%. And all of our calculations are at 50-50 matching grants. But as was just mentioned multiple times, history shows us we can compound some of those so that a lot of times you're looking at 20% down by local tax dollars or even less. But the point of that is to be in the running for any of these grants and to start that seed, you need to have local tax dollars. Without that local match, you're not getting anywhere. And that's what this is pushes for. So even though we've done all our numbers at a conservative route, we can look at history and show that this is the potential to acquire our target area. And the target area is over 45,700 acres of land. That's generational impacts to come here in Martin County.
Excellent. I think I really want to close it and thank Merritt and Jim for all the work they've been doing. Back in 2022, in December 2022, our organization, Florida Oceanographic, gave a letter of support for this initiative to kick it off and get going. And all the organizations have gotten behind it, including Rivers Coalition, in this effort. So it's something good for our county and for the river. And so we're all about trying to support this. So whatever you can, if you get out there in the community and you run into people that have questions and concerns, direct them to Merritt or others to get that information and make it clear. So before November 5th.
Yes, please get out, get people, spread the word for us. Take some shirts, take some hats. Hopefully that pile will be gone today. Take some yard signs and some koozies. You know, it's hot out there. Keep your beverage cold. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Give it up for Mayor. Thank you. So we'll kind of, yes. Oh, thank you for the
Air conditioning is going. Thank you, City of Stewart. They're great. All right, moving on to our agents updates. We're going to start right off with, I saw John is in the audience, John from Martin County. And John, we will get your name right on the agenda eventually. There's too many letters in there, so we're gonna fix that.
Maybe it's better that you don't.
No, 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 no.
All right, I'm gonna keep it short. Just two things. I'm not responsible enough to get a presentation in early, so I've got some stuff to hand out. You want to take some of those? Give me half of those back. Just half.
All right, the good old fashioned handout way. Handouts.
This is rated R. Just a warning.
What?
If you're under 18, what you're looking at is clam porn. We had a
It's a
really exciting day
natural process.
yesterday with, it is a natural process. We had a really exciting day yesterday. The project manager on one of our estuary restoration studies, Mike Houston, was with our vendor at the Florida Shellfish Company, which is housed behind Mark's office. And they successfully propagated some of these loosenid clams that we think are a significant part of the solution to getting the substrate right for seagrass restoration. What you're looking at in this picture is a new lab that was built on the left. That's some tanks of different food that these things eat. And on the right, that weird balloon-like thing, that is a spawn. So the little thing that's coming out shows that egg was fertilized, and they've got some that are a couple of weeks old now and growing, and we hope to be able to create a stock that we can include in incorporating in the seagrass restoration efforts in the future. Mike can tell you a whole lot more about that. The scientific name there, that's not real. Comitatus was the closest translation in Latin I could get to county. So they're like our county clams. If I could put little blue sailfish on them, I would, but I don't think we're there yet. Spats, thank you. You're in over your head when you're talking to a room full of science geeks and you're pretending to be one. The only other thing I wanted to talk about briefly, several people have asked for us to provide some perspective on the concept of litigating solutions for stopping discharges and fixing the estuary. Somebody I was speaking to just before the meeting made a really great point. We all want the same thing, and we're all in this together. There's just lots of different ways to get there. I'm going to tell you just a really short narrative. A couple of weeks ago, my kids were all home for the weekend. It was like their fall break. I got a couple kids in college scattered about, and we spent the day Saturday out playing all day. When we got home, we were both hungry and exhausted. Has anybody ever had that experience? So nobody wanted to make a meal. We weren't really in any condition to go out to dinner. So I jumped on my phone, and Domino's has this cool app where you can, order stuff up, and it tells you the progress of the process of bringing you your food. Well, I made the order. Everyone's starving to death. People kept looking at the kitchen. Kids kind of kept wandering into the kitchen like, no, don't do it. It's coming. It'll be here soon. I'm like, man, I know there's food out there. Getting impatient, but we kept looking at the app that showed the little line that said, okay, it's in the oven. It's being boxed up. Now it's in the truck and it's on its way. And as it worked from left to right, our anticipation of being able to enjoy that pizza got closer and closer. I thought to myself this morning, if only we had something like that for Everglades restoration. And then I remembered, we got this thing. And what I'm holding here came out yesterday. This is the draft 2024 update for Everglades restoration. And if you look, you don't have one. And I need to send these things in early. This green area here is our stuff. All of these things help with Everglades, with eliminating discharges. The EAA reservoir down here just got a $3 billion contract. It's under construction. Huge, huge progress. But when you look at our stuff, the C-23, C-24, the C-44, the STAs, the muck removal, it's all on here. And it shows us, hey, we're making progress. There's funding allocated, and we're going to get to a destination. The inspiration, I think, for pursuing a litigation route, and I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not even a resident of the city of Stewart, so I have neither standing or expertise on the issue, but we've seen some success with that in the past. It's a legitimate method of achieving objectives. I think the most inspiring example is what happened with the consent decree when the Department of Justice sued the state. They fought it out for a long time and were successful with a settlement that said, hey, we're going to spend 20 years building some infrastructure to fix this problem. We have that, and we're well on our way. So I think it's just something to consider as we work through that. That's all I'm going to say about that. Should I ask for questions, or would it be better if I didn't? Hey, okay, we're good.
All right, good. Is Ben here from the city, Stuart, or we usually get updates from Ben or any commissioner updates? Thank you very much again, commissioners, for being here. Also, Martin County Commissioner, South Florida Water Management District, we got Lawrence Glenn with us. That's right, they're here. Thank you very much.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Mark, oh, it's okay.
We have a question online or something, or what came up?
No, Mark, hi, good morning. This is Eula Clark.
Oh, hi,
I just wanted, we don't have anything, but, we're gonna I'm sorry that Ben isn't there, but we'll get to you with more things that the city is doing, with regard to the river in the future. Okay?
More on that. We're looking forward to that. Thank you, Eula, for that update. Appreciate
Okay,
it very much.
thanks.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Well, thanks for having me today. I'm going to go through and give you the water conditions and ecological conditions through the district following Hurricanes Helene and Milton. And I'll be fast because there's a lot of slides, but there's some great information in here. Next slide, please. It skipped skipped 3. Oh, well, go to where you were. It'll be fine. Okay. All right. Well, when we look at the district starts up right around Orlando, and we were concerned with what happens in the Kissimmee Chain of Lakes when rains come. And one of the slides that is not there currently showed that there was almost 11-inch maximum just outside of the district. But for the district on a whole, is it not? Okay. It was about 3.5 inches of rain up there. So all of that flows through these lakes down into Lake Kissimmee and then down the Kissimmee River into Lake Okeechobee. To orient you to these slides, the yellow line at the top of each plot there is the safe development line for folks that live on those lakes. And then you come down and there's the high pool line, which is the blue line. So we had 2 lakes over here. We had Lake Myrtle and Lake Hart that we were very concerned about. So next slide. We were able to go, you see the 3 green pumps over here. We installed temporary pumps up there very quickly, had them loaded on trucks, had them just deployed the next day in order to provide relief to those areas because these were really hard hit in Ian and remained flooded for a period of time. Next slide. This is what the Kissimmee River looks like currently. You see that it has 5,000 CFS coming down. That means it's relieving a lot of the pressure from the rains and floodwaters that happened in the upper basin. For the Kissimmee itself, at this time of year, on a typical wet year, we would have floodplain inundation, but probably not to this extent. One of the things we see when we have these large storm events is it drives dissolved oxygen levels down very rapidly. And we were almost at 0, but those have ameliorated in the time since then. And then the floodplain is also available for fishes to go find those areas of refuge. Next. Looking at Lake Okeechobee, on the graph on the right, you see what discharge was coming into and out of the lake. So if anything's above the line in orange, that's water coming into the lake. Blue below it is water going out of the lake. There's not a lot of water going out of the lake and a lot of water coming into the lake. So we had up to a peak of 11,000 CFS coming into the lake. And if you go around that figure on the left, you see where all those volumes were coming from. So you've heard it probably before that the lake can accept 5 to 6 more times water than it can push out. So that's one of the things that we deal with when we try to manage water in the system. Next. Where we are today, this data is only a little bit stale, but the lake is at 16.1. So if you look at where that is, that red trace that's going along in the ecological envelopes there below it, the regular ecological envelope has a high of 15.5. And so we're a half a foot above that ecological envelope. Next slide. The next slide shows that if we're looking at a recovery envelope, so the lake, when it's had high water for a long period of time, we have difficulty with SAV growth. And SAV is extremely important habitat, just like seagrasses in the estuary here, same sort of habitat in the lake. And so for us to be able to get to recovery, because we've had 5 years of really poor seagrass, SAV growth, we want to be in that green band to try to get water levels low enough for photosynthesis to occur to actually get regrowth. So we're above that, and that's going to be a tough thing to consider as we're going through operations decisions with our partner, the Army Corps, and all the stakeholders. Yeah. When I'm talking photosynthesis here in terms of SAV, I'm talking about plants that are growing on the bottom, light being able to penetrate through that water column and get to the plants. Next slide. This is a conditional outlook. So these lines take us from where we are, and they have hypotheticals on where we could be in the future. And so if you follow that red trace and the purple trace currently where we are, we're really in October or almost in November. So we're about here, and we're right above 16. So we're in between this 50th and 70th percentile. And where that has us down in June, where we would like to be is about 12 for recovery of, and that's even a little high, but we would take 12 happily. So we're seeing it might be difficult to get to a recovery stage on Lake Okeechobee because these 2 storms. Next. When a hurricane comes by, you have something that's called a seiche. So you have this really powerful wind coming from the south to the north, and it actually takes water and moves it from the south to the north. So in this seiche, go ahead and hit the button again. It was a 7.5 foot difference. So it stole 3.5 feet of water from the south side and pushed it up against the north side. And so when you have that tilt of the lake, it has to equilibrate. So you get slosh. And we've talked about the sediments that are out in Lake Okeechobee that are very easily suspendable. They release phosphorus, they increase turbidity within the water column. And if we're talking about SAV and you have very turbid water, light cannot penetrate very far into that water for photosynthesis to happen. And then you have that turbidity compounded with increased depth, and that's very difficult for SAV growth. Next. So if you hit again, one more push. So Hurricane Ian, when Hurricane Ian happened and it had a 10-foot seiche, we have stations all across the lake where we're measuring turbidity. And we see a very rapid increase in turbidity, both in shallow, intermediate, and deep areas within the lake. Go again. Under normal conditions, our winters since 2004, 2005, we had all those hurricanes that crisscrossed the lake, and they resuspended sediments to a point that they resuspend now even under our winter storm events that come across. So here's a hurricane, here's a normal winter. Next, Milton and Helene, though, you see very different condition. We're not having the turbidity as much as we had previously, and especially not in these two zones in the lake. So that's one saving grace potentially for SAV growth. Next. What we did see is rack formation. So when you have all of that wind and it is pulling up vegetation, and then it's pushing against the edge of where, you know, the water has gone. So here's the marsh. Here's the open water area, and this is all dead vegetation that gets bunched up along that interface. What this can do, if it's deep enough and thick enough, if it blocks exchange of water in and out of the marsh, it also blocks the exchange of organisms. So fish that are maybe wanting to come in to spawn, they can't get where they need to go. Fortunately, FWC has a program where they come through, and on the northeast part of the marsh, they look at these racks annually, and they have a method to go out there and chop these up in specific areas that they deem most important to be able to have that exchange again. Next. SAV, we monitor every year, and we just got our data in. We have a slight uptick of 1,000 acres from last year, but that still only puts us at 3,700 acres of SAV on the entire lake, where we prefer to be at about 30,000. So you see those numbers here in these last 5 years have been really low. And you look at the green areas, and that's where we have SAV growth, and we've have maps from the past where there is so much more green. So SAV is definitely taking it on the chin, and we were hoping for a recovery this year operation, but you know, we'll see where we can get. But the 2 hurricanes definitely put a little bit of water on there that might make that a little more difficult for the next year. I will tell you though that the submerged aquatic vegetation that we do have in the lake is highly resilient. Although it's small sprigs that are out there, we'll see what overwinters. But we've seen in the past, after really bad drought events, when the lake went extremely low, if the lake can come up slowly, we can have pretty remarkable rebound. And what you're seeing in the blue, there's 2 different types of SAV. We have the stuff that grows on the bottom, that's vascular plant, like eelgrass. And then this is Chara. It is it's a microalgae. Chara is like the first one to go. If Chara's growing, it's like it needs all those light conditions. If it's growing, you know, the conditions are great for the vascular plants as well. So we're hoping to get a year where we can have that good Chara growth. It's kind of a pioneer species. It makes the conditions right for the vasculars to come behind it. Next. I'll speed up a little bit, but not in your section. So here's what we've seen in the St. Lucie. And blue is when we're having lake discharge. And you see we haven't had lake discharge since April of 24. So all of the water that is coming into the St. Lucie now is coming from the basin itself. It's basin runoff. What that has done is this is a salinity gradient with we're going from fresh water to saline water. It's made the majority of the estuary very, very fresh. And that has pushed salinity conditions down into the poor range for adult oysters. Next. Looking at when we do our recruitment surveys, you see that the St. Lucie can be bimodal, meaning it can have an early spawn and a late season spawn. We had a bit of an early season spawn, and I don't know that we'll see a late season spawn, but next. When you're looking at, this is just what's being produced, and then this shows recruitment. So if that means if you're producing, but nobody's becoming an adult, this bar would be smaller. When this bar is higher than this bar, it means that that spat that occurred, those young that were released, are actually recruiting into the adult population. So you're getting a growth in population. Next. On the other side, they too haven't had lake releases. You see, they're going to resume this weekend, but there's been so much basin runoff from all the rains. I mean, they got hit hard 2 times in a row. So all of the water that has been coming through this system has been coming from the basin itself. The West Coast, not to the East Coast. So the Caloosahatchee will start with their pulse, and Major Bell will talk about it, of up to 2,000. So that will start help alleviating pressure on the lake. Next slide. We look at the stormwater treatment areas. The stormwater treatment areas are all this. This is the optimal level we would like to operate them. And you see they are all above that optimum level. When you start getting into these blues, it means they're a little bit deep. So they've received, a lot of rainfall directly from the storm themselves. Next. Lots of tornadoes came through. Everybody's aware of the tornadoes. Next slide. I oversee the STAs, and we had tornadoes go through every STA except for STA 3-4. So I'm worried about the vegetation in the STA that we spend a lot of money on to help us to get to QBell. So every STA had tracks that went directly over. We did reconnaissance missions afterwards, and there was no damage to vegetation in any of them. Yes. But we did have, next slide, STA 1 East. It borders, here is Rustic Ranches and here's the Aero Club. That's where tornadoes went through, and so we did get debris out into the STAs, but we have ground crews out there now actually cleaning all that up. Next. Looking at water depths within the Everglades themselves, Water Conservation Area 1 is about at schedule. Water Conservation Area 2 is about a foot above schedule. Water Conservation Area 3 is about a foot above schedule. And then when you go into Everglades National Park, conditions down there look great. So the Army Corps operates the S10s, which are located about right here, and they're not pumping anything right now from 1 to 2 because 1 is in great shape. From 2, the S11s go from the Water Conservation Area 2 to 3. Y'all had 2,000 CFS yesterday? About 2,000 CFS coming out from there, trying to alleviate conditions here. And then we go down to the S12s, A, B, C, D are all open. A and B will close at the end of the month, and trying to ameliorate conditions here. So FWC has closed this Water Conservation Area 1 to the public because they do spotlight surveys at night on the levees. And the high water conditions are very problematic for the fur-bearing animals. So if they go out and they do a spotlight sample, they expect not to see more than 10 deer. And they have seen up to 73. So as long as that's the case and we are, approaching the hunting season, they close that down to give these animals a chance. And then down in Everglades National Park, what you see are actually fantastic conditions because you have hydrologic connectivity and going out to 10,000 Islands, Shark River Slough, and Taylor Slough. Yep, I got 2 more slides. 3. The high water levels, or water levels in any ecosystem, there's some organisms that are going to want one condition and there's some that are going to want another. For wading birds, we have this huge colony called the Alley North colony. It can hold up to 60,000 wading bird nests in a year. It can be the largest in North America. And if we are not at about 11.5 feet at October 15, we don't have enough water to have a nice smooth recession down to about 9.5 on March 15. We have found if we're below 9.5 on March 15, that nesting doesn't occur or is very reduced. But if it's above, nesting can be fantastic. So we were very concerned coming into this. we were much drier, but this has been a plus. So the water levels have gotten back up above that peak that we can have a smooth recession for wading bird success. And then Florida Bay. So for Florida Bay, we look at this, I call it the blue brick road. This is the interquartile range for salinity for the eastern, the central, and the western. We added this little gold standard down here. This is the historic record of where salinity should be. And you see here that salinity is in great condition in the eastern and the central, a little high in the western. But if you were to look at this from today's data, everybody is below that interquartile range there. So Florida Bay has a really good setup going into the dry season. And I think my last slide, something that we did, the district, Tampa, got hit by Helene. and they had a lot of damage to their homes, and they had all of their, stuff that they had been carting out of their house and putting on the street and waiting to be picked up. And then here was coming Milton. And they were having trouble getting that debris. So we actually sent teams over to help. So the district said, hey, you're not even in our area, but this is a really big deal. Let us come and try to help you out. So we send crews to try to help that community. And that's it.
Thanks. So what you just saw was a pretty complete update and report, and Lawrence Glenn does this at each of the governing board meetings. Governing board meeting this past month, but also coming up governing board meetings in November. So you can stay tuned to that or watch those virtually as well. So thanks for that very comprehensive kind of updates, and especially about the storm events. Major Bell, could you give us a quick kind of updates on the LOSUM implementation and maybe C44?
Sure, I got
Thanks.
a couple quick updates for everyone. So we awarded the Indian River Lagoon South C2324 North Reservoir for $192 million. So that's area interest for you. And the North Reservoir will provide approximately 30,000 acre feet of storage. We anticipate that completion to be in the 28 timeframe calendar year. And as mentioned before, we awarded EAA A2 embankment and structures. That's $2.8 billion. It's the largest in Jacksonville history, and also the largest in civil works throughout our enterprise, Corps of Engineers, as a standalone contract. At the C24 23-24 STA, there's no major delays. We anticipate that completion to be finished in January of 26, so that'll also add some other resources for the basin here. As mentioned before, Lake O is currently at 16.1 feet. In our current models in QPF, so that's the rainfall prediction, we're looking at peak around mid-November right now, maybe sooner, based on the conditions I just got before this meeting. The next 7-14 days are going to be extremely dry, so we may hit that earlier. Earlier this season, you may have heard Colonel Bowman talk about approaching the BC line and maybe getting close to that. Our current models has us significantly reduced that, so we'll still stay and remain in Zone D and do not anticipate coming within inner boundaries on the BC line, so that's great news. C44, so seepage management, we're still on target for a September of 25 award for that feature with anticipated completion of the calendar year 26. Currently, we're at 9 feet on that, and we're still waiting for data. But if we were to make releases out of S402 through the S80, we'll notify stakeholders for that. With the drier conditions, we have an opportunity right now to make those releases to get the reservoir down, just in case we do have a late storm in the hurricane season. And we're looking good across that. And then we will, as mentioned before, start releases on Saturday, target 2000 to the west through the Caloosahatchee through the S77 structures. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Major Bell. Appreciate it. Yeah. Yes, we want Lako to recover from being so high for so long, and we need to get it down, but they're not going to enter into hopefully the Lako recovery operations until they determine how much the benefit's going to be on that, as I understand. So,
yeah, so that's a great question, Mr. Perry. So Lako recovery operations, are we looking at it? So there's a lot of different scenarios, conditions, and models we run. So I gave the approval to the staff today to schedule a meeting with Colonel Bowman to kind of show him the scenarios that are going to be played out, could be played out based on conditions. And we'll get his input. We're working with all our stakeholders and partners, state and federal agencies, on if that is a condition that we're going to enter into. But right now, we're still looking at all the factors. They're just, there's a lot to consider. And especially if it's going to be very dry, there's always a concern of water management shortage. So we have to balance all those requirements. So we're still looking at that. No decisions have been made. I think November 18th, we're going to release our dry season strategy. So that'll be hosted by South Florida at their headquarters in Palm Beach. So if you want to come down to see that, we'll have all the positions there as well.
Great. We'll look to November 18th. Paul Gray, we've got any quick updates? Thanks, Paul, for being here. Appreciate you. Real quick.
Yeah, so the recovery strategy, if we did it, we'd have to get a lot of water out of the lake, and with it being at 16 feet right now, it would be really hard to get it low enough to really help. And so I kind of don't expect we're probably going to try it this year. It's probably not a good year. If we were at 14 or 15 feet, it would be different, but we're at 16, and to get down to 12 from here would be bad. So I furnished a an announcement of a study that's going on in Lake Okeechobee. It was commissioned by the legislature. And what they're looking at, they've charged FGCU and partners to look at what could we do inside the Hoover Dike to help the lake, because we got the SAV problems and other things like that. And so this is due January 1st. So they're in a hurry. They're going to have a public meeting. They have a survey online. And they're not looking at changing releases. They're not looking at doing water projects in the Kissimmee Valley. They're just saying, what can we do inside the dike? And that includes treating exotic species, maybe planting native species. They're putting up some experimental barriers out in the lake to try to see if we can get turbidity down and maybe stimulate SAV growth. There's people looking at the mud in the middle of the lake and saying, can we treat it chemically and kind of get it to quit being so flocculent and stuff. So there's, and prescribed burning and stuff like that. So it's just what happens inside the dike. What can we do to help the lake and the marsh? There's a survey. It'll ask you where you live, what your interest is in the lake, fishing, hunting, bird watching, how often you go to the lake, where do you go? And then the three questions they have are, have you seen changes in the lake recently? The second one is, what do you think caused them, if you did? And then third one is, what do we need to do about it? So if you want to take that survey, if you're interested in the lake, if you go over there and hunt and fish or whatever, Mark has a QR code.
Yeah,
and a link.
we posted this notice
Yeah.
on the Rivers Coalition website. So it has a QR code and you can scan it, take it. It's November 6th and 7th, 2 different workshops they're going to have. So,
Yeah, so there's public workshops,
Set
but
up.
you can just sit at home and take the survey if you want.
All right.
So thank you.
thanks, Paul. Really appreciate that. We'll quickly go into some, the legislative updates and then we can talk about that. With basically Gil and leading off, and maybe Eve and Casey might chime in too. Gil.
Really not much to talk about. Just wanted to mention the Florida legislative session will be from March 4th to May 2nd. The elections are going to determine committee chair assignments. So who's going to chair some of these key committees? You know, we'll have to wait and see what happens with the election. And both the Senate will have and House are going to have new leadership. Senator Ben Albritton is going to be the new Senate president. Representative Danny Perez is going to be the Speaker of the House. But that's about all I have. Let me hunt over.
Yeah, so we also had some comments or thoughts about addressing a particular amendment that's up on referendum on the ballot, this issue 2 about that right to hunt and fish. So we're going to turn it over to Eve and Casey to kind of give a little update on that.
Thanks, Mark. Casey Darling-Niffen, Conservation Policy Director with the Florida Wildlife Federation. We have an amendment on our ballot, Amendment 2, the right to hunt and fish. The Florida Wildlife Federation has recommended that the vote be no for that amendment. We oppose it. I just want to start by saying that we absolutely support ethical hunting and angling. That is not the issue. This is an unnecessary amendment. It could have unintended consequences, and there's no threat to hunting and fishing in Florida. If that went to committee, if somebody proposed a bill, we would be the first ones there saying we don't want this. So you can rest assured that we would always defend the right to hunt and fish in Florida, and we recommend the vote of no on that amendment for those reasons.
Very briefly, Friends of the Everglades also recommends voting no on Amendment 2. A couple of additional points. This isn't a citizen-led initiative, ballot initiative, like some of the other amendments on the ballot. This was put on the ballot by the Florida legislature, which doesn't always have the best track record for environmental protection or for interpreting environmental amendments. So that's one point. And there's just a couple of words in the amendment that if you've already voted, maybe you've noticed them. This would make hunting and fishing the quote unquote preferred method of wildlife management in Florida. Sometimes hunting and fishing are. We need to let the science dictate that. More often, hunting and fishing are not. So those words really matter. And also it would, let's see my notes here. It would include, it specifically calls out protecting traditional means of hunting and fishing without defining what those are. Could that be gill netting? We don't know. So just another point. And finally, it's important to follow the money on these amendments, look at who's backing them. This month, U.S. Sugar gave $25,000 to this amendment. We don't know why, but it's just worth noting. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for the update. And we encourage everybody to get out and vote for this coming up election. And we also going to quickly do any kind of committee reports and then wrap it up real quick. So we'll start out with River Kids, and Casey and Kelly's here too. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Kelly, and I'll just give it real quick. The River Kids showed up and helped out with the cleanup efforts after Hurricane Milton. The beaches, as you all know, looked terrible with all of the foam insulation and styrofoam. So we got them out there really quickly. We thank the community for coming out. We had what I like to call river grown-ups join us as well. Please always know that you are welcome, whether you have kids, grandkids here or not. Please come out and help us out in those events. The River Kids will be at the Environmental Studies Center this weekend on the 26th. Barbara will be there with her famous face paint, so please go out and see them there. And then we are also looking to get the kids more involved in, getting out to the beaches. I know Kelly mentioned our Friday night hikes idea. We want to get that rolling in the wonderful hiking season that we have here in Florida. The hurricanes put a little bit of a damper on it, but we're looking forward to getting out there. And please, when you go out to vote, please keep the kids in mind. The half-cent sales tax absolutely benefits our future generations. That includes River Kids. They showed up to speak in support of it at the county coalition meeting, or excuse me, county commission meeting. So yes, thank you so much, and we hope to see you out there on Saturday.
All right. Todd, you have a quick update on the speaker bureau, and then we go from there. Great.
I'm Todd Weissing. I'm the coordinator of the Rivers Coalition, the Speakers Bureau. May not look like it, but we are open for business. A lot of organizations, our season is coming up. They're meeting in the next 6 months. Schedule a time. Think about the Rivers Coalition. We'd love to come and speak to your organization. Way to get us, see me after the meeting, or go to the Rivers Coalition website. Click a little button that says request a speaker. Can't be any easier.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So we're kind of local updates. As you know, the water quality is really pretty poor, and it's been poor actually for almost over a month and a half. Since mid-August, basically, we've been getting a lot of discharges, as you heard, not from Lake Okeechobee, but from our local basin runoff. And this local basin, about 530,000 acres, includes C23, C24, and C44 discharges that are coming into the estuary. Over 4,000 or 5,000 CFS is coming in. Now, the recover metrics are less than 1,400 is optimum. Anything over 1,700 CFS into the estuary is damaging. And it's been damaging now for the past time. So we've got to work with the district and the others on local basin runoff and trying to control that. Now that we've not having discharge from the lake, thank you very much, but it's now the basin runoff we got to really work on to clean up our water quality. Todd, I don't know, we got any updates? I know Jim is not at another meeting right now. He's not able to attend. I want to thank everybody for turning out, and especially get out here and do what we can for the waterways. Wherever you can, clean up things like, the beach cleanups, things that are happening in our community, we need to all be aware of and pay attention to. So thanks again for coming, and we'll wrap up and adjourn the meeting and clear out by 12:30. We got to get out of here. Yay. Thank you. Thank you.